Hey everyone, today I'm wearing my Lyft jacket, my Lyft shirt, and my Lyft sweats. Damn, that was kind of tiring. So two exciting career-related things happened recently. One, which a lot of people probably know, our company IPO'd. And second, I recently got promoted. It was honestly a really big moment in my life, like a lot bigger than I thought it would be, because up until this time, I've done 2 small internships and 5 big internships, but I always felt like the people I was working with were a lot smarter than me. And I always knew people around me that were doing much bigger things, were doing things faster, doing more things, and doing more impactful things. And then you also hear about people who work at super hard to get into companies and make super outrageous salaries. And then for me, I just felt like, wow, they're just like gods of programming, and I'm just this person who just worked really hard to get where I am, but I don't necessarily have the most talent. All I have is the hard work that I put in. However, getting this promotion really sort of validated that, hey, I am doing a good job and my coworkers actually enjoy working with me, and the product that I'm working on is helping a lot of people, and the work I'm working on is helping a lot of other people on my team and other people in the company. So yeah, when my coworkers all put in their feedback and then my manager compiled all of their feedback and gave me a summary and also gave me a rating, it really made me feel that my work was acknowledged by others and I'm actually kind of good at what I do, you know? I'm not the intern who doesn't know anything anymore and is just constantly learning. I've actually learned a lot, and I'm starting to be confident in the work that I do, be confident in what I say and the decisions that I make. Around the time that I got promoted, I also realized that I got over my imposter syndrome. I've sort of really come to terms that there will always be people better than me, but I'm also someone who can stand my own ground and put out some really good work. And yeah, this is something I want to talk about with you today. Actually, about a year ago, I made a video on imposter syndrome, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate, whether it's at school, at work, or even just like at sports events or something. So I guess this is just an update on my perspective of it and also my own experiences of imposter syndrome. So this is how I felt before. After my first 2 small internships, I really wanted a big internship like Yelp, Google, or Facebook, something like that. So I would basically cram leak code every day and work on like 7 to 10 problems. And when the interview season came along, I was like super on top of my interview game. I didn't get a Google at first, but then I got some pretty good companies like Yelp and Hulu, and it really felt like I made it. But at the same time, some people never really prepare for interviews and would just pass it on intuition and just because they're so good with their logic. But for me, I had to put in a lot of work, and even though I spent so much time on interview problems, during the day-to-day, your ability to write an algorithm within 45 minutes or your knowledge of binary trees and how to traverse them, they don't really pop up during work. And most of the time, if you need something, you can just Google it, right? Imagine if all tech interviews was just, they give you a problem, you take out your computer and just Google it. Wouldn't that be like the easiest interview ever? So I didn't really think that the skills I gained from preparing for these interviews and passing them would really translate to the job. And that was why when I did my internships, I would be surrounded by really talented people in software engineering who are actually good software engineers, not good competitive programmers. And then another thing was, I did a lot of internships, like 5 big ones. And every internship, I basically had to start from scratch again. I had to learn their code base, learn the company culture, learn a new technology, because I jumped from Android to iOS to JavaScript / C++, back to iOS, and then C#. So like every internship, I was basically starting from scratch and I had nothing to build off of. Whereas like other interns would maybe intern for 3 internships at the same company. So at their 3rd internship, they're pretty much like able to operate at the level of a full-time engineer. So that was a source of my imposter syndrome in college and during my internships. Getting my job at Lyft, when I first joined, I also felt like a super imposter because Our iOS team is just super legit, and we have some of the most amazing contributors to the Swift community at Lyft. For example, the person who sits the aisle behind me actually is the person who started SwiftLint and still actively maintains it. A lot of other iOS developers in our company also participate massively in the discussion of the Swift language and features to introduce to Swift. So it was just an absolute honor to even join the company and work with these brilliant minds. So a small part of me was just very scared to join this company and have all these amazing people realize that, shit, I don't know that much iOS. I don't know as much as them. My interview was honestly super hard, and they really grilled me and really saw the depths of my knowledge in certain areas, but also my weaknesses and lack of knowledge in other areas. And deep down, I also knew that these were just irrational fears that I came up with, but I still couldn't help having these fears. But days would go by, weeks would go by, months would go by, and I would be super proactive about learning from these really great people and also just becoming a better iOS engineer. And it was just great to work in a codebase that had one of the best practices and principles that made it really easy for me to learn through osmosis, almost just by being there. And yeah, so as I worked, I took on bigger and bigger tasks. I started working with more and more people, and not just within iOS, but also with Android, with managers, with backend engineers. I mean, I've been working with other people in my past internships as well, but when you're working full-time, the mentality is totally different. It's not just a short 3-month, 4-month sprint, but it's a long marathon. You're working on a project for months. Like my last project was 8 to 10 months. And it takes a lot of teamwork and cooperation and coordination to get that done. And now I'm the sole iOS engineer on the project I'm working on. That's super impactful and will not only help all the coworkers that I'm working with, but also all our users of Lyft. You should be using Lyft, not Uber. But yeah, so this is so cliche to say, but imposter syndrome never really goes away. You just sort of know how to deal with it, because everyone is sort of an imposter. You could be the expert in this one thing, but then you might be a complete newbie in this other thing. Like you might be the super knowledgeable iOS engineer, but you know jack shit about Android or web or backend. And does that make you an imposter? No. And this is the really cliche part. It's about knowing what you know, knowing what you don't know, and then being able to handle what you don't know and being able to either find the answer or find someone who knows the answer. And then there's sort of coping with what you don't know that you don't know. There's so much knowledge swirling around everywhere that it's impossible for you to know everything, right? So taking that into account, we're all imposters. We all pretend that we know so much, yet we know so little. And I think that's why the smartest people I know and the people that have done the most are usually the most humble, because even though they know all that they know, they've also come to realize that there's just also so much that they don't know. How many times have I said no in this video? Alright, so now I want to share some tips on how you can get over imposter syndrome or just feel more comfortable when you're just surrounded by people being so much better than you, or you feel insecure that you don't know much, because that you can always change. The first thing to internalize is you just have to work hard. You have to put in the time and the effort to become less imposterish. You have to take the time to really focus on what you want and decide how to get there and put in the time to get there, because otherwise you're just a dreamer. The next thing is you have to be proactive about your learning. You can't just wait for other people to feed you information. If you want something in life, you have to go for it. Otherwise, the only person you can blame is yourself. The third thing I want to say is that you want to understand your problem deeply. You want to understand everything you're learning deeply. Especially in computer science, when you're trying to solve a problem or do something, don't just get it to work. Really understand the code that you're working with and understand everything you touch and the system. This way you'll be able to fully justify the decisions you made when you wrote that piece of code. And this way you'll also be able to concretely discuss details with your coworkers. Also, when you deeply understand the problem you're working with, you can also bring up other possible problems or even solutions and other ideas that other people might not have thought of. And it takes that deep understanding to truly know what you're saying. Also, you just have to be curious about the codebase, see how things work, and maybe even spend 2 hours exploring the codebase because you might come across something that's super interesting. Don't be afraid of wasting time exploring a codebase because you'll be surprised of what you learn, and also you have no idea of what you need in the future. The next tip I have is to figure out the right questions to ask. Honestly, sometimes when you're staring at code, your head just starts spinning in circles. You have so many questions, and when you try to find the answers, you just find more questions. And that's totally normal. But as you keep getting better at it, you'll start to be able to figure out the right questions to ask. And also, your questions might start out very basic and very high level, but as you keep working, you'll find yourself asking more specific questions and questions that are more related to your problem. The next point I want to talk about is getting really familiar with their tools. So when you first join a company, you might be familiar with, I don't know, Xcode or Android Studio or IntelliJ, but each company might also have their own build tools or make tools that you really won't know until you get there, right? Like Google and Facebook have their internal tools that aren't even released to the public, so you won't even know about them until you join. So an important part of getting over imposter syndrome, I guess, is to just get really familiar with those tools, so your questions become less, how do I use this tool, and more related to your actual work. The second and last tip I want to share is connect more with your coworkers, either during lunch or after work. When you first start your job, you might feel that your coworkers are judging you and judging your performance. But when you get to know them more and get to know them more as people and as friends, then it becomes more of a journey that you're taking together to do something amazing. When you hang out with your friends after work, it's a good bonding moment that helps you be more connected to your friends, be more connected to your coworkers, and makes you more willing to help your coworkers, and also makes your coworkers be more willing in helping you. It also makes you feel less bad about asking for help from your coworker because it's more like asking help from a friend. And at the end of the day, you want to be on good terms with the people that you work with, and it just makes working a lot more fun and a lot more meaningful because you're not just doing work to help your company make more money or even help your company with their mission. You're also helping your coworkers get their work done faster. And I'd just rather go on a journey with friends than coworkers. And my final tip is to accelerate your learning with your mentor. Take full advantage of your mentor and ask them all the questions you have and really utilize them because they're there to help you succeed, right? So help them help you succeed. What I'm not telling you to do though is to ask them every single question you have, which kind of contradicts what I just said, but be really mindful of the questions you ask. Ask a question, unblock yourself, then get to work, really try to go as far as you can. But if you're blocked again, feel free to ask your mentor again because again, they're there to help you. Over time, my intuition on how to solve a problem got better and better and better, and I sort of knew how to build views or do logic or the right design principles and design patterns to use. I would know what to Google, where to look in the code base, and even who to reach out to if I had more questions. As you get used to your company, the tools, the code, the people, you start to become more productive. As I kept working, I became more confident in my own abilities and became more confident in voicing my opinions because I knew that I had solid evidence to back up any claims that I made. And as you're working, you start to learn how to graciously fall back if you said something stupid, or you know better how to reach out to people you've never talked to before. And you also feel more comfortable pushing back on PMs, other engineers who might want to set unrealistic deadlines or ask for features that don't really work or implement things in a way that don't really make sense. But yeah, so I'm super late to lunch. I needed to cut this video off super abruptly, but it was really fun making this video. It's been a crazy year and a few months working on Lyft, and I'm excited to see what comes next. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, and comment in the video. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. See you.